Welcome to the Energize-Marketing podcast. For those who don't know, Energize-Marketing is a leading tech media network and demand generation provider specializing in ABM solutions. I'm Michael Greenhut.
And I'm David Steifman. We're the co-founders of Energize-Marketing, and we just wrapped up an incredible session in London with FIS, and we're live from B2B Marketing Live.
We figured what better way to kick off this podcast than diving into some of the biggest takeaways from our State of Demand Generation 2025 global survey and talk about what we didn't have time to unpack on stage with Norbert Loran from FIS at yesterday's speaking session. The Energize-Marketing State of Demand Generation 2025 global survey surveyed 300 plus marketing leaders across North America, EMEA, Latin America, APAC, and covered a wide variety of themes such as pipeline pressure, ABM growth, webinar shift, and AI reality.
And this is what we covered in this session as well, talking about pipeline. And it came up in every conversation at our booth. Why do you think marketers have hit this turning point? I mean, when we look at our survey data, 91% selected a pipeline-driven goal, whether that was extremely pipeline-focused, account-based marketing focused, lead quality in their top three choices. And 52% ranked drive qualified pipeline as their number one priority. Clearly, there are pressures.
Yeah, that's very, very clear. And speaking with customers on the daily, learning from them, there are some serious pressures. I mean, there's always been pressures, right? But now we think organizations they're over vanity metrics. They want something tangible. We'll talk a little bit about budget increases, but with budget increases come more responsibility, more accountability. CFOs don't want to look at marketing much anymore as a demand center. They want to look at function as a growth center, a revenue driver for the organization. So with that comes more tangible metrics. And I think that's why we're seeing 2025, as we talked about yesterday, being the pipeline mandate, right? And that's only going to continue to be extended into the new year. CFOs, they're really scrutinizing budgets. So, they're taking a real deep dive. What's working, what's not working. So Energize-Marketing and the great lead generation programs of demand gen that we're doing, that's music to our ears.
Absolutely. And I think we're seeing, and we've seen this for some time, the role of the marketer has changed significantly. And the pressure to be revenue oriented and attributed is great. All of these tools to measure data perhaps put more pressure on marketers to learn new things, to stay up, to have that communication with sales, with C-level, and figure out how to measure effectiveness. Those pressures are continuing as we go into 2026.
Yeah, and as marketers get evaluated more under the microscope in this crowded marketplace, they're going to continue to be selective. So great programs, great organization, outcome-based companies will continue to thrive, and others probably
fade into the dust.
Right, exactly, David. So it's interesting because we heard people whispering about budget cuts, but that's not what the data said. What surprised you here?
Well, the optimism in 2026 budgeting is telling, and it's exciting. Only 8% were saying that they were going to decrease their budget. And as we look around and look at the trends, and we see the market talking about site traffic taking significant hits, we're hearing from our own customers that they're doubling down on full funnel demand generation strategies, content syndication, ways to drive pipeline and $4 into these areas when others aren't, in fact, working at this time and in this changing landscape. So that was really encouraging. We actually saw that enterprise technology led the pack with 59% expecting increases in budget. So the headline really is 2026 is going to be the year of the pipeline mandate.
Yeah, absolutely. We're finishing up the year in 25 in similar fashion as well. I mean, overall, 53% expect budget increases. So again, to the point earlier, if money's getting thrown to marketing, there's a reason. Driving results is the key, and it's going to be the bottom line. So that's exciting, you know.
And that doesn't mean that marketers and organizations don't have their challenges ahead. Even with budgets increasing, the pressures are great. They obviously have to prove it, and they're going to be measured like never before because there are so many tools out there.
That's a really good point, because when you think about attribution and the number of different marketing activities out there in such an enterprise tech, especially these long sales cycle, there's events and content syndication, et cetera. There needs to be tangible attribution metrics. And you see that from content syndication and ABM style programs.
Now let's talk a little bit about sort of content and what reigns, credible content. Everyone's talking about shorter written content, but the conversation data doesn't lie. Why do you think long form, serious research content still wins?
Well, let me just quote a couple stats from the data from the survey real quick and say 49% rank research reports as a number one converter. 45 rank white papers as a number one converter, which plays right into the research and creating content from the research as well with that longer form content, right? So in a crowded marketplace, right, our surveys and reports, they've been supplying customers with hard-hitting data, and using that for lead generation is very, very powerful play. Works extremely well when you have this data and you're putting it into the market. Our customers, prospects and customers as well, want to hear from peers. What's working? What's not working? What are the trends? And they could utilize that in a very effective and efficient manner.
You know, in an AI-driven world, we're producing report-based surveys that capture the exact needs and pain points of our customers' accounts in ways, and they tell us this, that they in fact struggle to amass this type of account level intel. Paired with demand generation strategies and the sales intelligence that they're getting out of this survey-based data, written up into engaging executive reports that are substantial and hard-hitting. It really can be an impactful way to drive pipeline.
The reports have great legs, right? The lead generation play we just mentioned, outcome-based leads that you get from these reports are they're really nice. But that sales intelligence, that it's value add, right? That you get this message from the market. You could then internally use it for sales enablement. Use it to power messaging for the masses, right? So there's so much you get out of it. And because it's data from your prospects, from your customers, that it's going to resonate with them. So it's in the customer's voice when you're using it internally for the craft and the creation of external messaging. So it's pretty cool. It's got a lot of different boxes to check when you do a research report. So you can't just think, if you're a marketer, that I'm just going to do this research report for the lead gen, which is a primary thought, and that's fantastic. But think of it as full picture, all the other tangible and intangible or non-tangible events that you get out of the content itself. Let's move into what we call the new webinar formula, right? And we just spoke about long form content. Now we've been producing a lot of high quality short form webinars for clients within our Tech Talks brand. Now, it's interesting because long form research reports, white papers, short form webinars. So there's use cases for the different lengths of content. So it's not one size fits all, right? Format can be different for different needs, you know, and so how does the data line up with what we're seeing for the webinars and the short form content? Well, 75% have high interest in webinars. 52% of marketers are very interested in short form bingeable webinars, as we like to call them. 48% prioritize pro look and sound. So quality means a lot in today's market. And overseas or in APAC and EMEA, depends on where you're based, of course, greater than 60% prefer short form content.
So let me get this straight. This 60-minute webinar that's shot in a grainy quality is RIP in our eyes. I mean, the B2B industry hasn't really changed the webinar format as long as I can remember. And in today's climate and the way that prospects are engaging with content, the data is showing that they want shorter formats, flexible formats they can download and watch at their leisure with their busy lifestyles and environments. But it's our job also to work with our customers and represent our customers to make sure that their brand perception is really high. And that's where we get into high quality webinars. That's where we get into the formats. That's where we get into great speakers, a broadcast look and feel. Maybe we're following the consumer industry, but it's time the B2B industry demands high quality webinars that match with their brand perception and stand out in a crowded marketplace.
Yeah, I think a natural reaction to viewing poor quality webinars specifically is to move on, to turn it off for what's next, right? You know, and content formats that fit people's current attention spans in today's market is really important as well. As Norbert said yesterday, Norbert Loran from FIS, who we did the speaking session with yesterday on stage, when we were discussing this, he had rightfully pointed out, people like to perhaps watch a quick 20-minute webinar on the train, on their commute to work. So, you know, give the audience one or two really strong takeaways about your company, about your process, about pain points, etc. One or two really strong ones that they'll remember, that they'll take away, not 45 of them that they're not going to remember any of.
So what you're saying is, let's let B2B buyers wanting a little bit more, give them
Absolutely.
a flavor of your organization, what you're good at doing in a succinct and engaging way, so they come back and engage with you to learn more about your organization and get in touch and current on a topic and current on today's times. And let's not forget that these brands have to tell similar stories over and over again. They have to think about episodic. They have to think about, I'm on today's topic, I'm timing it with today's news or regulations or what's happening in the industry, and I'll be back for more. But they're engaging with their prospects, you know, in a way that's digestible for prospects to actually interact with their brands.
And everyone loves talking about AI right now. But what did the data show about what's real and what's hype? A couple of quick data points. 52% use AI for content creation, personalization. Only 22% have high confidence in their first-party data. So what do you think? What is real and what is hype?
I think, was it alarming to see 22% have only 22% have high confidence in their first-party data? yes and no. I think what it tells us is these organizations are over flooded with data, but it's poor data. They're over flooded with tools and systems, sometimes legacy systems that they have organizational pressures to use. And, we could get into the marketing teams being on overdrive with data and systems and tasks, the sales teams with large account lists and contacts, and they're overwhelmed. And now we're not even talking about good quality data. Perhaps that's yet another reason why our customers are coming to us for high quality lead generation, because the first party data that they're amassing needs a lot of account management, to the point where they're wondering if some of it can be sort of tossed aside to make room for new high quality data.
Data is very interesting because it's one of those things where you want a lot of it and you want to utilize it in effective ways, but it snowballs out of control. And before you even know what's going on, the data turns bad quality, poor, and you really need strict controls, about the data. Just like with the CRM, for example, a CRM is only as good as the underlying data, and we've seen for years sales teams, marketing teams throwing tons of data into a CRM in hopes that it will provide good outcomes, but it just ends up turning it into a mess. So there's nice enrichment tools being utilized in the AI world for CRM and automation data to clean it up. But I think the verdict is still out there on how well that's going to do. So we'll see. How about predictions for 2025 and 26 in the world of AI and adoption curves? I heard a really great quote recently that said, AI is not going to replace your job, but someone using AI effectively is going to replace your job. And I thought that was interesting and true.
Yeah, I mean, AI is here to stay. And it's not just for the marketers to learn and leverage, AI and the tools and systems. The whole organization needs to get on board with how they use the tools to run their business at optimum level. So AI isn't going away, but whether you're getting into high quality content, which we talked about, or you're getting into sales, enablement, measurement, of course, AI has to be monitored and reviewed and double checked and triple checked.
Yeah. Let's end it here. I think we can go on and on about these topics, but let's end it here. Thank you to everyone who's listening, and stay tuned for our next episode, which will be dropping soon. You can follow us on LinkedIn at Energize-Marketing or at Energize-Marketing.com to get your copy of the Energize-Marketing 2025 Demand Generation Survey Report.
This was really fun. Can't wait for the next one.
Absolutely.